An increasing number of Westerners are travelling overseas to get access to stem cell treatment in countries like Mexico, Thailand and India. Known as stem cell tourism, it's being fuelled by stricter regulations in the West. But have they found better care abroad? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, in Europe, stem cell therapy has helped blood cancer patients and those who've had strokes, but treatment is limited. Those wanting more innovative stem cell treatment are travelling abroad, as well as healthy people looking for regenerative treatment for longevity. So, how safe is this overseas therapy, and why is Europe apparently lagging behind?
Travelling abroad to far-flung places such as Thailand and Mexico for medical treatment is on the rise. Medical tourism is a multi-billion-pound industry, and one of its latest offerings is stem cell therapy. Patients who travel for this type of treatment suffer from a range of conditions, including strokes, Parkinson's disease, and spinal cord injuries. But stem cell tourism is also used for anti-aging purposes to repair and rejuvenate tissue. American tech entrepreneur Brian Johnson recently flew to the Bahamas to get stem cell therapy.
My team and I are constantly searching for groundbreaking new therapies, which is why I'm flying to a resort in the Bahamas owned by Tiger Woods and Justin Timberlake, where I'll be injected in all 6 of my major joints with 300 million stem cells.
Treatment abroad can be cheaper than the West, as well as quicker without long waiting lists. But there are dangers to stem cell tourism. Use of unapproved stem cell products and unsafe medical practices have been associated with infection, cell rejection, and even death. Despite the risks, patients continue to flock to exotic destinations to help them achieve a longer life and the fountain of youth.
Well, let's meet our guests. Joining me from Newport in the United States is Irving Stackpole. He is president of Stackpole and Associates Consultancy, which works in the field of health tourism. Here with me in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is Professor Dusko Ilic. He's Professor of Stem Cell Science at King's College in London, and Dr. Mattias Bernow, who is co-founder and CEO of Cellcolabs. That's a biotechnology company specialising in stem cells. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Mattias, I'll come to you first. Just spell out for me, what is stem cell therapy?
Stem cell therapy is something that has been developed over the past 40 years. Everybody knows what a stem cell is. It all starts with a sperm and an egg, and then there's a fetus, and then there's a human being. Stem cells is a reservoir of building blocks that we have our entire life. And where research is today is that we can use certain part of these building blocks. And within the field of stem cell therapy, and also what is known as stem cell tourism around the world, there is one particular type of stem cells that has been of certain interest. They're called MSC. They're called mesenchymal stem cells. They're also called medicinal signaling cells. The acronym is MSCs. And what has been shown over the past 25 years is that A, if you do them in the right way, and if there's one takeaway from today's talk, it's GMP, good manufacturing practice. That is the highest level of quality for production anywhere in the world. And if you produce them according to GMP, they have a very beneficial safety profile. So that is the start for any medical doctor. You want to have the safety. So then what do? They are 3 things where there's a consensus around the world in the scientific community. They are anti-inflammatory, suppressing inflammation. Inflammation being the main driver behind chronic diseases, behind aging, but also many types of cancer. Apart from being anti-inflammatory, they are regenerative and can help heal damaged tissue. Whether it is minor cartilage tissue after you do your morning 5K run, if you're in a car crash, or if you have a lower limb ischemia or a diabetic ulcer to your foot and amputation is next. So anti-inflammatory, regenerative, and difficult word for a Swedish speaker, immunomodulatory. They can help reset or rebalance the immune system when it goes wrong. You all heard of diabetes type 1 being an autoimmune disease. It cannot cure that, but clinical trials by others doing this on diabetes type 1 has shown that the diabetic patient can keep their own insulin production for longer. But there is much research to do, and that's why we're in the field, to make the cells available.
Dusko, it has extraordinary benefits then, stem cell therapy. Do you agree?
I fully agree. I mean, the stem cell field lies about more than 15 years. And I do agree with Mattias. They have very big potential. It's not only in regenerative medicine, but also in testing new drugs and understanding mechanism of the disease.
And tell me, how exciting is this then for the future? I mean, are we looking at people living longer because of stem cell therapy, if this is managed correctly? I mean, should mankind be celebrating this?
Let's hope that we will longer because of stem cells, but we don't have proofs yet that this would really happen. Stem cell field is relatively new, and we don't know yet long-term consequences. We don't know how long regenerative capability is there when we transplant cells in some patients.
Well, let's go to the USA. Irving is there for us. Irving, talk to us about stem cell tourism then. How much appetite is there globally for people traveling to have this kind of treatment?
It's a fascinating question, and it's a fascinating subject. There might not be another clinical arena where the realm of consumer interests in medical science, global provision of clinical care, and the very edges of science are sort of blurred. So Dr. Mattias pointed out that there's no proof. The gold standard in science is, in medical science, is the randomized clinical trial. And while there are no, as I understand it, there's a lack of proof. That means that there aren't a lot of RCTs demonstrating the effectiveness of stem cell treatments in these areas. But that hasn't prevented many people from seeking treatments abroad, and for the development of certain technologies and even clusters in certain destination areas developing. So there are many stem cell treatment areas in the Caribbean, for example, and Bahamas and Bermuda that are attracting consumers from the United States and Canada. A friend of mine had a shoulder injection with stem cells, and he swears it improved his golf game. So there's quite a lot of activity in the cross-border trade of health tourism or medical tourism around stem cells.
Mattias, are we split into two groups of patients here? People who have been given a diagnosis and are desperate to try anything that will help ease the pain or prolong their life. And then on the other hand, we have people who are into wellness and longevity. Is that what we're looking at, the two camps of people who would be using stem cell therapy?
The short answer to that question is yes. And it's fantastic how these two camps are driving the science parallel to, as we just heard, the market or the demand for cells is one driver. And then we have the research driving it to showing what can be proved. And that is so important. And that is why we as a company, we're based on 25 years of research coming out of Karolinska, well, one of the world's renowned, most renowned professors who has spent her life in this. And it's kind of an interesting story because she had tried it with GVHD, which is the starting point for many things of this, which is graft versus host disease, transplant complication. Then tried it on several other indications, diabetes, MS, and many more, in collaboration with others. Then came the pandemic. And like a few others around the world, she understood that the patient who fell really ill with COVID, got the white lung syndrome and the multi-organ failure and trouble to breathe, she understood that the cells could probably be used treating this. And she was right in so. She got an approved trial in Sweden and did so. There's a much, much, much bigger trial coming out of New York, Mount Sinai, who showed that it was actually super beneficial for the COVID patients in intensive care to get the MSCs. Professor Leblanc, though, understood that, well, when even I can have enough cells to do the bigger trial in Sweden, she said, well, enough is enough. We've proven that the cells that they have a very beneficial profile, but when I can have enough cells, there's a problem in the world. And the problem is cost and availability. So that is why she said, you can use my lifetime of research to set up a company to industrial scale production. So we're one of the biggest companies today producing mesenchymal stem cells according to GMP. And as such, we supply to research groups university hospitals and clinics around the world where they can do the clinical trials or treatments within the regulatory frameworks. And in both camps, we have the, so to speak, the ones that you mentioned with indications, where there is heart disease, dementia, arthritis of the knees, where there are, in some countries, there are actually approved products for this, while in many others, they're still in the phase 2 and phase 3 trials showing effect before it becomes a registered product. And then you have the other camp, the longevity sector, the people who may be in their 40s or 55, who they've made their money, they have a very good life, they may still be working in C positions and working 24/7, who are thinking, how can they uphold their health? How can they remain healthy? How can they have a long and healthy life? And that's where their interest comes from.
Dusko, I read this week the England rugby player Tom Curry, who has had a hip injury. He's had an operation, and as part of his recovery to get ready for playing professional rugby again, he's having regular injections into the hip of stem cells. Is this something that we would see sports people doing as well to aid recovery?
It's not only sports people. People do, I mean, everyone knows that Madonna got injection of mesenchymal stem cells into knees with the idea that it would improve her condition so she can be dancing on the stage better. So it is happening, and it will be happening. We still don't have hard proof how much really helps, because there is also, we should not forget, placebo effect, which means people are thinking, okay, we are getting something very new, some cutting-edge medicine, and just their own brain helps body to get better.
And tell me, Dusko, do you think we're at the start of a golden age then, or is this the beginning of a golden age?
I hope we are.
Irving, all this talk about tourism, which countries are people going to then for stem cell therapy? Which countries are people heading to?
Well, they're heading to a variety of destinations, and the markets for health tourism are highly regionalized. So people from North America tend to be going to the Caribbean, as I said, although Mexico has a very good reputation for its stem cell innovations and treatment centers. The difficulty there is, of course, the narco-terrorism and the instability of the state is making traveling there difficult. In Asia, the markets are regionalized. India has established itself as an attractive destination for those seeking stem cell treatments. And part of the challenge to the markets, and part of the challenge that Dr. Mattias and Professor Dusko mentioned, is that stem cells are a bit of a solution looking for a problem. They are allegedly, and by some demonstrations, effective in certain areas that are quite an array of areas. So everything from orthopedics to cardiomyopathies. So that's quite a range. So I think when you say golden age, I think we're headed into an area where stem cells will further define themselves, and the providers offering these cells through good manufacturing processes and impeccable clinical technique will stand out in the not too distant future, both to consumers who are looking for lifestyle benefit and those consumers who are looking for truly life-saving, life-intervening procedures.
Mattias, it strikes me that this is an industry that will need a lot of regulation. I mean, we're seeing humans wanting to live more, stay healthier, longevity, discussions. There's money to be made in this, clearly. Yes. Have you any concerns about regulation?
I have many concerns about regulation. You're saying that it needs to be heavily regulated, and I want to say, yes, it does. The challenge is that it is already quite heavily regulated. And it's regulated today like if the stem cells would be a chemical drug product, which is not the optimal framework for cell therapy. And this is for good, because before it was regulated as transplant, and any doctor could take the cells and give them to anyone in need, which is very beautiful because the cells are what is called immunomodulatory. You don't need to match donor and receiver, so it's quite easy for a doctor to do. That was, of course, overutilized, so then it was highly regulated, and then it was over-regulated, I would say, where we are right now. Though Japan received the Nobel Prize on stem cells in 2012 with the Yamanaka factor, that's a different story. But they then understood that this can never be commercialized within the normal framework that you would see in Japan, US, Europe, and many other parts of the world. So they did some minor but very smart changes to their regulatory frameworks, and they are now leading the charge. They have MSCs approved for myocardial heart infarction, for I think it's knee arthritis, and at least 2 or 3 more indications. There are 10 approved MSC treatments around the world for different indications. And as we heard, the stem cells may be seeking for an indication, or they're seeking for their place in the toolbox of healthcare. And to give you kind of a sense of where they may fit in, there's a former dean at the Harvard School of Medicine who said that stem cell therapies have the potential to be for chronic diseases what antibiotics was for infectious diseases. And if we look at the history of healthcare, there's been a few inflection points, major inflection points. Vaccines, eradicating polio, for example, has done amazing things for the world. Alexander Fleming, discovering antibiotics 80 years ago, changed healthcare. People don't need to die from simple infections. We can do surgery in a new way with antibiotics. Now, with the promise of stem cells, and mesenchymal stem cells in particularly, maybe, and this is me hoping, it is still to prove, we can not only treat or even cure some of the chronic diseases and work with the longevity sector. What if we can work preventatively before the disease sets in?
Before we get there.
Yes, but that is the reason why we need to have a lot of stem cells at a much better price point, so we can do much more research to understand where do they help, where do they not help, so people don't pay unnecessarily. And also, but it's still to find out, are they dangerous for someone? We don't know. We haven't seen any severe side effects when it comes to bone marrow-derived mesenchymal stem cells. And once again, if they're produced according to GMP, good manufacturing practice, anyone everywhere in the world considering to go for stem cell tourism or treatment, look for GMP. If there's one thing to take away from today, GMP.
Dusko, do you have any concerns about rogue operators? I mean, people get a diagnosis nowadays, they immediately go to the internet, and just a search around will point you in maybe the right direction, but many times the wrong.
But I do have concerns because it's really like there is a lot of, as you mentioned, rough operators outside who are trying to make money, and they're preying to people who are in despair because of pain or disease, or there is no any other available treatment. In most cases, they don't disclose everything what they should disclose to those patients, and this is where the problem is. When we're looking about stem cells, so it cannot be treated as normal drugs, as Mattias mentioned. So with normal standard drugs, you have it's chemical, you have certain dosage, you know how, if you increase dosage, how it would work, and so it's much easier to control. And people know, but it's much more accessible to understanding side effects or how much effect really drug has. However, with stem cells, there are 3 major differences. One is the source. It is, I mean, stem cells, if taken from someone of my age, are really not the same if they're taken from someone who is 10 years old. Then it means you're starting with different potency, with different quality of the cells. Second, this is only what we can control at the moment. This is manufacturing. And Mattias is right, it has to be GMP. This is what we can control. What we cannot, I mean, maybe in the future we will be able to, but right now we still don't know how recipients would react on them. One of the models is how actually MSCs, or mesenchymal stromal cells, or stem cells, actually exercise their effect is depending in which environment they are transplanted. So if the patient has really severe immune reaction, like we had the cytokine storm, so-called in COVID, or during the transplant is GVHD, graft versus host disease, where whole body is subjected to increased inflammation. Then when you really give to patients MSCs, those stem cells, they would be really stimulated to secrete other factors who would actually calm down the inflammation. On the other hand, if the stimulus is not too strong, like in chronic diseases, they may secrete something, but not as much as they would be doing if the stimulus is strong. So it's really difficult to predict without knowing exactly how you can level of stimulation, level of what is cytokines and other factors causing immune reaction in the body, how they would actually exercise and affect mesenchymal stem cells.
Irving, back to you. Do you have any concerns about rogue operators in the stem cell industry?
Oh, indeed. And the stem cell delivery supply chain and fulfillment side, that's where the ethical issues arise. As Dr. Mattias pointed out, the good manufacturing processes are known and are developing continually. So the product itself, the material itself, is generally fine. It's the ethical promises, it's the marketing technique, and it's the technique of admission, the treatment itself that's the issue. And there's very little control in local jurisdictions over how individual providers administer these solutions. So you've got a highly fragmented market looking for everything from lifestyle to life-saving. And you have an array of potential providers who, as was pointed out previously, some of whom are unethical and simply trying to maximize their profit. So indeed, I think there needs to be greater definition, probably by the industry itself, by the providers and the developers themselves, and contributions by Professor Dusko and by Dr. Mattias are important in this regard.
Mattias, give me an indication of cost here. There will be people watching who will be, I'm guessing, curious about stem cells, and there will be people who will, unfortunately, have recently had a diagnosis of an illness. What should a course cost?
Let me answer it like this. You could be happy to Google Cellcolabs Clinical, our subsidiary, and then you can read everything on our homepage, which is then, as Dr. Irving points out, it's approved by the National Committee where we conduct the clinical trials. So cellcolabsclinical.com, where you can find about the price. But when it comes to price, it's very important because just like Dr. Irving just pointed out, there are a lot of charlatans out there trying to make money out of desperate people or just rich people who want to get the cells. And that is one of the biggest problems for the entire industry. And that is also why academia looks at us with a, can we work with you? Yes or no? What is stem cells? It has a very tainted rumor around the world, stem cells overall. You can go and you can get a fantastic GMP-approved cell product within a clinical trial, which in my opinion is the only way you should get it. Either as a registered product in a country where you get the treatment in a hospital, or as part of a clinical trial, because then they will make sure that the trial is controlled. It's been approved by an ethical board that it's as safe as can be for the participants, and that it has potential to improve science and be potential for the participant. And then there are different price points. You can go to Mexico, and you can get the same thing that may cost ranging from 16,500 in the Caribbean or in the Bahamas. You can get that same price at 5,000 in Mexico. And it's financially less money, but I would bet you almost everything I have that the $5,000 cells in Mexico, they're not GMP.
They're not the same
they're
quality?
They're GLP at best, meant for lab work or for animals. And you can use them. They are used around the world, and people report benefits. They're not used in science, of course, but people report benefits from them. What they don't think about is that they pay with risk. If you pay $5,000 for something that should cost $16,500,
there's a huge risk.
There's a discount that you pay in risk. And not everyone who goes to Mexico make it back.
Dusko, do you think more people need to be educated on this then? They see a cheap trip to Mexico, 5,000 quid.
I would not equal the success with the price and with the country where you receive the treatment. It is actually success, as I mentioned, depends on individual person, on disease that you have, on the situation that you have in your body. We should not forget that why patients go to Caribbean or to Mexico, because they cannot receive treatment in United States or United Kingdom or European Union. And why is that case? Because there are regulations and regulatory bodies like FDA, or in UK's MHRA, or EMEA in European Union. They defined exactly, they're trying to move stem cells from the rest of medications pharmaceuticals that we know. They are defining new rules and putting new regulations out. And so if we manipulate those stem cells in certain way, then they may change. And we don't know exactly how they're changing. So they're really then strictly regulated. And it is allowed to receive stem cell treatment in this country too, in US too, but the cells should not be manipulated. And so this is a kind of fine balance and a lot of semantics.
Irving, Mattias and Dusko, thank you all so much for your insight on this one. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.